What do you know about hunting in Alaska? If you had asked me 20 years ago what I knew about hunting in Alaska, I would say absolutely nothing. But then 16 years ago, I married into an Alaskan hunting family. So over the past 16 years, I have learned a lot about hunting in Alaska, but I still do not know everything. It can get very complex. But I would like to give you a glimpse into how some of it works by answering some commonly asked questions that have been submitted by our viewers here on the channel. A lot of the information I will be sharing with you today can be found on the Alaska Department of Fish and Game website. There is so much information there if you want to find out more after watching this video. Number one, you need a hunting license to hunt in Alaska. The first thing I saw when I opened up the Alaska Fish and Game website was this. Alaska offers opportunities to harvest game and fur animals unmatched in any other state. However, no one may harvest game or fur animals without first acquiring the appropriate license and any tags, permits, or harvest tickets required for specific hunts. So whether you are a resident or not, you must have a hunting license to even think about hunting in Alaska. Hunting and fishing licenses are required for anybody 18 and older. So kids are exempt, but there are some special rules when it comes to kids for hunting that I will explain a little later in the video. That leads us to number two. You must have a permit to hunt a specific animal. Many hunts in Alaska are draw hunts, meaning you are put into a lottery for a specific area for a specific animal, and only so many permits are drawn per area. The application period for draw hunts in Alaska is the beginning of November through mid-December. This year it is November 1st through December 15th. You have to put in for your draw permits for the following year. You have to have a valid Alaska hunting license to even submit your names for these hunts, whether you are a resident or a non-resident. Every time you put your name in for a hunt, it is a $5 to $10 fee, and those can start to add up depending on how many hunts you're putting your name in for. Then comes what many hunters call Second Christmas. On the third Friday in February, you can go online, enter your name, and see what permits you've been drawn for. Sometimes you get lucky, and other times you don't get anything at all. You can only receive one permit per species, and you do not get any money back for the ones that you do not get drawn for. Each year, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game puts out a hunting supplement that tells you what areas are open and how many permits can be drawn per area. My husband spends countless hours in the months of October and November looking at all the different options in this supplement. During this time, he also buys our hunting and fishing licenses for the following year, since you have to have that to even apply for hunts. And at the end of the day, he usually spends around $500 buying our licenses and putting in permits for the following year. There are some hunting options that do not require you to pull a permit for, but these areas tend to have more competition and their own set of very specific rules, so you have to make sure that you pay attention to those rules. For example, if you are doing an open moose hunt in an area where you do not need a specific permit, you might have to just shoot one that has either a spike fork, meaning really tiny spikes, or over 50 inches of antlers, which means you do have to sit and study it and decide if it has over 50 inches, which can be very intimidating. Whereas if you get a permit, it might be for just any cow or anything with antlers, which can be a bit easier. We've often been thankful for these open hunts when we do not draw a permit, and this gives us another option. As Alaska residents, we don't often have to pay any more fees beyond what I've already explained, but as non-resident, there are some high tag fees that you may have to pay. As I was looking at the list on the Fish and Game website, I was really surprised at how expensive some of these hunts are for non-residents and non-resident aliens. It made me realize that they really do try and cater to the Alaska residents before bringing in outside hunters. For non-residents, they also give you an actual physical tag that you put on the animal when you are harvesting it and bring it back to Fish and Game. So if you ever plan a hunting trip to Alaska, make sure you look into all the regulations when you're doing it, because there are different ones for residents and non-residents, but all hunts do require you to report back in some way, letting Fish and Game know what you harvested or what you did not harvest that year. Fish and Game keeps very close eye on animal and fish populations, making sure that populations are sustainable and that future generations to come will still get the opportunity to harvest animals. They are very careful, and that is why all these regulations are put in place and all these fees are put in place, is to ensure that this can continue for generations to come. Which leads us to number 3 on our list. Next, Hunting in Alaska is not easy. Alaska is a land of extremes, extreme landscapes, extreme weather, and extreme hunting conditions. While some hunts might be easier than others, many require multiple forms of transportation to make them happen. This includes your car, your truck, a small airplane, a boat, a pack raft, and most importantly, getting your boots on the ground and walking and hiking in not ideal conditions. Hi, I need you to stay out of the shot. Then we have the countless hours spent checking Google Maps, figuring out routes, making packing lists, gathering up those supplies, buying all your supplies, making sure you have good equipment, good shoes, good rain gear, food, and then physically preparing for the grueling hunt. All of this is part of the journey of hunting in Alaska. Yes, we do have a lot of moose walking through town, but these are not the ones that are getting harvested unless they get hit by a car, which is something we'll talk about a little later in the video. You may be wondering if I have ever been on a moose hunt. Let me tell you a little bit about my first moose hunt. I drew a permit for an any bull tag in a certain area that was accessible by airplane. We do have a small airplane, a Cessna 170B. It is a 4-seater airplane, and my husband had the perfect place to take us. We flew into the area the day before, set up camp, went to sleep, and started hunting very early in the morning. Where we were hunting was on a mountainside, and we headed downhill, slowly glassing the area, trying to find a moose. A few hours later, we spotted a big, beautiful bull with giant antlers, and my husband was able to help me get set up, and I shot my first moose. If I'm being honest, there was a lot of adrenaline, but I just remembered feeling extreme gratitude to be able to harvest this animal to feed our family. And I was excited to learn what it took to now get this animal home with my husband, because I had stayed home from all the other moose hunts and I was ready to experience it for myself. And he gave me the full experience. So we then had this gigantic bull that we needed to butcher. Most of the butchering takes place right there in the field. We had to cut up the various pieces of meat, get them put into game bags, trying to keep them as clean as possible. And then it's also very important to move those game bags away from the kill site. So we then transported all the game bags about half a mile to a mile away up towards camp to get them away from the kill site, because bears can be attracted to that gut pile and come, and you don't want to come back and startle a bear. So that was step number one, was getting all of the meat to a new location, ideally hanging in some sort of tree so that it can start to cool off and be protected from other animals. Then we started our, I think it was about a 1.5 mile hike up the mountain with as heavy of bags as we could handle. And we continued to do this for the next 48 hours, up and down. And it started pouring rain, the fog rolled in, our beautiful morning then turned into just really, really hard weather to deal with. We were soaked to the bone, and it was so much work. Moose are really big animals. They're very heavy packs. I know my husband was carrying a much heavier pack than me, and it was just exhausting work. We would get to the top, get something to eat, and then head back down. I think it took us a total of 5 trips each, with my husband taking an extra trip to get the antlers. The antlers are the last thing to come out because the meat is what is important. They wouldn't want you to just harvest the antlers and leave the meat behind. That would be totally irresponsible. So that is the last thing to come up. And I did not come with my husband on that last and final trip. I was so exhausted. Then we got stuck in the tent for another 3 days because there was so much fog we could not take off. Only way we were able to contact our family was with a satellite phone, so we pretty much turned it on once a day, called them, let them know what was going on. And finally, after several days being stuck in the tent with our meat outside beside us, with a bear fence around it, we were able to see a break in the clouds. We quickly put as much as we could into the airplane and were able to just take off and make it home. And my husband did have to go back for additional trips to make sure we got everything back to town. It was so much work. It gave me a whole new understanding of what it takes to go hunting, especially in the wilds of Alaska. And this kitty is not gonna let me talk without getting her moment of spotlight. You need to say hi, huh? Yes, okay. You said your hellos. That is not my only hunting story, but they are all equally as much work, and it quickly showed me how extreme hunting in Alaska can be. We've often been told that because we have an airplane, we are really lucky when it comes to hunting in Alaska, and that it must make it so easy. In my experience, it does get you to some really awesome places to go hunting, but you still have to put in the hard work once you get there. It does not make it super easy. And just in case I haven't mentioned it already, if you are using a small airplane, you cannot fly and shoot on the same day. You have to fly in the day before and then go hunting the next day. So you typically fly in several days before and start hiking and camping before your hunt begins. Which leads us to item number 4. Many viewers have asked me if everybody in Alaska hunts, and the answer is no. In my experience, most people here do not hunt for their food. Most of my friends have never even tried game meat or cooked with game meat. It's just not part of their lifestyles. And I had never done any of that either before meeting my husband. Game meats like moose and caribou and bear are not available in the grocery store here, and they are not served in restaurants. Hunting is for personal use only, to share with your family and your friends, and you cannot sell the meat. The closest thing to game meat that you will see being offered is something made with reindeer sausage, because reindeer are domesticated caribou and their meat is regulated, so they can put that into like sausage products. But if you look carefully at the back of most reindeer products, it's about 99% beef and pork and maybe less than 1% reindeer. So they're just pretty much putting it on the label to get you to think that you are eating something exotic. From what I have seen, many people who hunt in Alaska had parents and grandparents who also like to hunt, and it has been passed down to their children. They went on hunts as children, learned the process of hunting and taking care of the meat as they were young, and then they just continued to learn more and more as they became adults. That is the case with my husband and his close friends. I have also seen a lot of people that move here from other places where they've had a lot of hunting opportunities and just fall right into the lifestyle of hunting in Alaska because it is something that they are already used to. Several of our children have shown interest in hunting here in Alaska, and Mark has done a great job teaching them and bringing them along with him as they've gotten old enough. Anyone born after 1986 must take a hunter's education course to be able to legally hunt if you live on the road system. The hunter safety course teaches gun safety, how to properly shoot an animal, and much more. It includes online information, a test, an in-person class, and a shooting test with instructors. Like I said, this is required for anybody that lives along the road system in Alaska. If they live in outlying communities, they have their own rules and regulations just because of access to classes. Now, I know in some states you have to wear this hunter's orange when you are hunting. Only kids under 18 are required to wear this orange, and they give them these vests and a hat when they go to hunter safety to make sure they have something that will work. Something to note, if children 11 or under shoot an animal, that counts as their parent's tag. They do not have to have their own permit, but it does count for their parents' permit. There are also some youth hunts that you can put kids into that open a few days earlier than the adult hunts, allowing kids a little bit of extra time to harvest an animal. There are not a lot of those hunts, but they can be really good for taking kids along and giving them a good experience. So from what I have observed, hunting in Alaska is often a family tradition that has been passed down, but that is not to say that people cannot learn new traditions. There is a big learning curve to hunting in Alaska and a lot of potential risks, but just asking people about their experiences can be really helpful in getting tips and tricks. But don't expect people to give up their favorite hunting spots and tell you where they got their animal, because those are often secrets. That leads us to number 5. Once you learn how and where to hunt, then you have to consider learning how to butcher the animal out in the field, often with very little help. If it is not something you've done before, it can be really daunting. When I've watched hunting shows with my husband and kids, I often see that they can haul the whole animal back and butcher it at their house, but that's often not the case in Alaska. You're usually doing the butchering right out in the field. This requires cutting up the animal into manageable size pieces and storing that in game bags so that the meat can stay clean and cool off, and then be transported back to your home. There are specific requirements depending on what animal you're harvesting on what you have to bring out with you, whether you have to bring the cape, the antlers, the skull, or different pieces of the animal. There are different things required for different animals by Fish and Game. So then what do you do with all that meat once you get it home? That leads us to number 6. Once you get the meat home, there is still so much work to do. The hard work is not over. You have a few options when you get home with your meat. Option 1 is to take it to a meat processor. We have several companies that do that here in South Central. They will then turn your meat into different cuts. You can have steaks made, roast, ground meat, or mince meat. You can let them know what cuts you're looking for. Then you also have the option of turning it into other products by adding spices and fats, things like sausages, hot dogs, and meat sticks, just to name a few. They typically charge by the pound for the finished product so that you're paying for the processing of your meat plus the addition of other products. Some guarantee that you are getting 100% of your own meat back, while others do not guarantee that, and they might be mixing it with other people's meat of the same species, which personally can be a little bit iffy because you don't know how other people took care of their meat. The nice thing about using a meat processor is that it all comes packaged and ready to store in your freezer. And just in case you're wondering, our favorite in the Anchorage area is Indian Valley Meats, but we actually prefer to do all the processing ourselves. So after harvesting an animal, we do all the processing here in our own kitchen. My husband identifies all the different cuts. We set aside steaks and roasts. The rest gets ground into burger. And then we turn some into fun things like moose jerky and Italian sausage. Whether you send it out to a meat processor or do it yourselves, you're then ready to fill your freezer for the year ahead. Thankfully, my in-laws taught me early in our marriage that anything that could be made with beef can also be made with moose meat. Sometimes you do have to add a little bit of fat because it is a very lean meat, but game meat is great for most recipes, which leads us to number 7. I often get asked what moose meat or other game meats taste like. To me, moose meat tastes like very lean beef because it has such a low fat content. As long as it has properly been taken care of and not overcooked, it is very hard to tell the difference between moose and beef, and most people don't even know that they are eating moose if you serve it to them. I came to the kitchen because I'm actually cooking a moose roast in the crock pot right now. This is a pot roast. It is a tougher cut of meat. It needed to cook longer. We are going to shred this and have it on tacos tonight. And then we could probably even add barbecue sauce to it tomorrow and have barbecue sandwiches, and they would all be delicious. And just in case you're interested in my preferred game meat, I'm gonna tell you my top 5, starting with my favorite, which is moose meat. It is extremely mild in flavor and very versatile to cook with. Also, one moose will feed our entire family, plus giving some to extended family for an entire year. Whereas if we get other animals, it often takes several hunting trips and several different times meat processing to get enough meat to feed our family, so I prefer getting one moose. Number 2 on my list is Sitka black-tailed deer. Again, it is a very mild meat. It is very versatile to cook with, and you can just make amazing things with it. You often need several deer to fill the freezer, but they can be a great addition, and I've always been happy when Mark has gotten a deer. They are found on islands in Alaska. We do not have them here in our area, but you can go out to some islands, and along southeast they have deer. Number 3 for me is spring black bear. Black bear meat has almost a sweet taste to it. Our favorite thing to make with it is Italian sausage and then put it in spaghetti. It is so delicious. There is a risk of trichinosis with bear meat, so you wanna make sure that you're eating it well cooked. You don't wanna have it like a steak that's medium rare or something. So we tend to turn all of our black bear meat into sausage, and it is delicious. Number 4 on the list for me is ducks and ptarmigan and small spruce hens. It is fun to change things up a bit and have some birds to eat during duck hunting season and whenever the boys can get a small grouse. And number 5 on the bottom of the list for me are caribou, sheep, and goats. I have had good food from all 3 of them, but I've also had terrible gamey meat from all 3 of them. So if I have a preference, these ones fall at the bottom of my list. Which leads us to number 8. There is a way to get game meat without hunting in Alaska, and this is called the Roadkill Moose program, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. Moose and other animals sometimes get hit by cars. In the winter, it is dark, it is icy, and animals like to cross the roads, and they are very hard to see, and sometimes they do end up getting hit. The police are called, they come and take care of the animal, and then they start calling people on the roadkill list program. You get your name put on it as a group or an individual, and you are called to come and get the moose if there is an accident. When I was a teenager, I was in a car that hit a moose, and it was a terrifying experience. They are extremely large animals. The cops came, they did have to kill that moose, and then the roadkill moose program would have taken into effect. I know there are a lot of people that sign up as like a group at church, and then all of those families share the meat. Some of the meat will most likely be damaged from getting hit by a car or whatever it's been injured doing, but there is a lot of good meat to be had, so I have eaten roadkill moose in the past and probably will in the future. If you are called to pick up a roadkill moose, you just need to have some sort of truck or trailer and some sort of winch or come along that you can pull that huge animal up into your truck and transport it back to your home for butchering, because there's no processing it right there on the road. It can be a lot of work. It often happens in the middle of the night and is not convenient, but it is an option for getting some meat here in Alaska. And that leads us to number 9 on my list. Next, we have some exceptions and special rules that apply here in Alaska. Number 1, we have a lot of military members, and they get some special rules even though they are usually not residents of the state. While they are here serving in Alaska, they can purchase military licenses, which are a lot cheaper than the non-resident licenses, and pretty much are treated like they are a resident while they are here, which is pretty awesome. And they can also defer permits and use them if they get deployed or something. They can use them at a later date. So they take care of the military members up here. Next is elderly or disabled people can have someone proxy hunt for them. There are special forms you have to fill out. This means somebody else goes out and does the hunting for them and brings the meat back to them. Next are people that reside in rural Alaska. They have special hunting rules that allow them to hunt while living in rural conditions. This can allow them things such as longer hunting seasons, bigger allowances on how many they can get, and different rules like that for subsistence living. And Alaska Natives who traditionally came from tribes that subsisted off of the ocean have marine mammal rights that other Alaskans do not have for hunting. I'm sure there's other exceptions and rules, but those are just a few that I found interesting. And that leads us to number 10. Last of all, marrying into a hunting family does not guarantee that you will love it. I know several people that will not even try the game meat that their spouses harvested. And to be perfectly honest, it was a whole new world for me when I got married as well. I watched as Mark and his parents got so excited about harvesting an animal and processing the meat, and I just didn't get it. I also was not a very good cook early on in our marriage, so having this abundance of game meat seemed very overwhelming. But I loved my husband and his family, and even though I didn't really enjoy it, I did get in on the process. Thankfully, after a few years of marriage, I made the decision to be all in, or else I would probably be miserable for the rest of my life, because this was going to be a big part of my life. And what that looked like for me was I decided to get really good at some of the butchering process. I was really good at setting up the kitchen so that it was all ready for everybody to help cut the meat and grind the meat and package the meat. I'm very good at all of those things. I'm really good at having the house ready to go when my husband gets home and help the process along. I also have gotten really good at cooking with that meat. I wouldn't even know how to buy beef or chicken at the store anymore. I now can say that I truly enjoy the process of taking care of the game meat as a family. We get everybody involved and we just do hard work together and fill the freezer, and it feels really, really rewarding. I will never know all the cuts of meat on a moose. I don't even really enjoy hunting that much. I will go occasionally every few years, but I prefer to let Mark go and I take care of things at home and have the house ready for him to come back, and that's okay. I still enjoy the whole process, and every few years I work up the courage to go on another hunt with him because they are so hard and so extreme, and then having to come home and be a mom after that, just I'm exhausted just thinking about it. So I prefer to stay home, but I do like to go along every once in a while and get to experience it again. But now our boys are getting older and they like to go along, so I am happy to stay home and take care of the kids that are not going along. So I know hunting is not for everybody, but it has been a big blessing for our family. I hope you enjoyed learning a bit about hunting in Alaska. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again real soon for more of This Alaska Live. I know, Luna, I smell funny, I look funny. Oh my gosh, if I do that again, I'm gonna be really mad at myself. You guys, this is so comical. I have so much stuff on and I'm sweating to death.